Neil Morrissey reveals more of TV's all-new naughtiest blunders here on ITV1. That's after tonight's news with Romilly Weeks.
Shock tactics, the government's new proposals to frighten young people into putting down their knives.
I want the families of victims, where they feel able to do that, to say to young people, this is what it means to a family to lose a son or a brother or a sister through knife crime.
Home Secretary Jackie Smith has unveiled measures that include visiting victims in hospital to show offenders the horrors of knife crime. It comes as police deal with 3 more stabbings, 2 of them fatal, across the country. Also on the programme, 9 US soldiers are killed as Taliban fighters storm an army outpost in Afghanistan. Plus, anger as a controversial gay bishop gives his first sermon on British soil, and why the row threatens to tear the Anglican Church in 2. His mother's son, Prince Harry, returns to Lesotho to see how his charity is helping vulnerable children. Good evening. Police have 3 men in custody tonight following 2 more stabbing deaths in a wave of knife crime that's been sweeping Britain. In Bristol and in Bolton, Greater Manchester, families are grieving tonight for the latest victims. It's put even more pressure on the government to take action on knife crime. And today, the Home Secretary Jackie Smith unveiled a series of shock tactics to try to jolt young people into realising the dangers of carrying knives. Here's our political correspondent, Simon Harris.
Another 24 hours, another chapter in the daily catalogue of knife crime in Britain. Stabbings in Bristol, Bolton and Dundee left 2 men dead, 1 seriously injured. The Home Secretary thinks knife-carrying young offenders should be forced to visit prisons and hospitals.
The gruesome nature of the injuries that can be caused, which is why I want, A&E doctors actually making clear to young people what happens when you use a knife. I want the families of victims, where they feel able to do that, to say to young people, this is what it means to a family to lose a son or a brother or a sister through knife crime.
Martin Dinnigan was 14 when he was stabbed to death by another teenager in London last year. His parents, Lorraine and James, are dismissive of the Home Secretary's idea.
If you're talking about taking young people into hospitals, maybe I think they might have an effect if they were to take them to the morgue. Maybe that would make them think twice. That would be my opinion.
I got attacked last night. I got sliced on my face there, just stabbed just under my eye and just cut down my face. I think my arm's a little grazed. That was for no reason.
Knife crime is so common in some parts of Britain, it is an accepted fact of life, unremarkable and unreported. ITV News spoke to this group of young men in inner-city London.
Anything this government that's actually bringing out to stop gun crime or knife crime, it's not working anymore. It's either making it worse or it's just being the same.
The Conservatives argue that knife attackers should automatically expect a jail sentence.
At the moment, we have about 1 in 6 who actually do time. They get a slap on the wrist at the moment with a caution. That isn't good enough. We need tough and immediate action to sort this, not some fluffy PR exercise, which is what I think Jackie Smith is talking about.
Politicians of all parties concede there is no quick fix, but the government's critics have attacked this latest initiative as half-baked, piecemeal and not even a new idea. Simon Harris, ITV News at the Home Office.
10 American soldiers have been killed in Afghanistan. 9 died in a battle in Kunar province near the border of Pakistan. NATO officials say dozens of Taliban insurgents were also killed in an attack on a coalition outpost that raged all day long. The 10th soldier was killed by a roadside bomb earlier this morning in the southern province of Helmand.
The fighting started early in the morning, and the insurgents were repulsed successfully. So I think their aim was to overrun this combat outpost, but they were defeated. And although I can't give you numbers, a large number of insurgents were killed, but unfortunately 9 ISAF soldiers died in the fighting, and another 15 ISAF soldiers were wounded, along with 4 Afghan National Army soldiers.
The world's first openly gay Anglican bishop arrived in the UK today to be greeted by death threats and hecklers. When the Right Reverend Gene Robinson tried to deliver his first sermon this evening, he was shouted down by a member of the congregation. Penny Marshall met the man seen by some as the future of the church and by others as the man who'll destroy it.
Bishop Gene Robinson's first sermon on British soil was interrupted. A sign of the division of this church, a sign of the passion the subject of homosexuality now evokes.
I have received death threats. I did around the time of my consecration, and they have begun again from here in England.
Specifically from people based in the UK?
Yes.
And how does that make you feel?
It's a concern. It's always in the back of my mind. It's a far greater concern to my partner and my daughters and my 2 granddaughters, but I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it.
Hundreds of Anglican bishops from all over the world are currently in Britain ahead of this week's crucial Lambeth Conference, a conference to which Gene Robinson has deliberately not been invited. And this prompted tonight's invitation to preach.
I'm ashamed that he's not been invited to the Lambeth Conference. It's a conference designed for listening, and the idea that the only openly gay bishop there is not being listened to, that seems to me entirely shameful. It's my way, our way of honouring him, to have him here and to listen to him.
But there are many within the global Anglican community who are not listening to each other. More than 100 traditional and evangelical bishops are staying away from Lambeth altogether, boycotting it. This is a church in crisis over many issues, particularly homosexuality.
I'm here not to talk about homosexuality. I'm here to talk about that kind of God. And I have to wonder how many people who, when they hear someone stand up and reaffirm that homosexuals are an abomination before God, how many people are running to their local Anglican church to get to know that God?
Tonight, Bishop Robinson is safe and welcome, preaching to liberals in London, albeit with a bit of heckling. But his presence will only alienate further those traditionalists struggling to stay united in the modern Anglican Church. Penny Marshall, ITV News, South West London.
The Prime Minister has been pressing European leaders to extend EU sanctions against Zimbabwe. At a summit in Paris, Gordon Brown said last week's veto of United Nations sanctions by Russia and China could not be easily justified. Mr. Brown says he's prepared to return to the UN to seek new action if there's no progress.
We should not lessen the pressure on this regime. It is illegitimate, holding on to power without the support of the electorate. And anything that we can do in the next few weeks with the mediation of the UN, as well as the African Union and the South Africans, is what we will continue to do.
Prince Harry has been back to the impoverished African country of Lesotho to see how a charity project he founded is helping the country's most vulnerable children. Our Africa correspondent Martin Geisler was there.
Dressing down but growing up fast, Prince Harry seems relaxed and at home among the mountains of Lesotho. As his adult life takes shape, so too Sentabali, the charity he's helped to found here. This visit a chance to thank the staff and meet the children whose lives it's changed. This centre helps some of the many youngsters who fall victim to abuse in Lesotho. 4-year-old Molise had been so badly beaten that when he arrived here he was unrecognisable. Staff say he's making good progress. He's certainly smiling again. Harry, it seems, has inherited his mother's desire to help the disadvantaged and her effortless ability to connect with children. Also, perhaps, her interesting relationship with the press. But he will have to balance this work with the other great passion in his life, the army.
I've got a job, so when I can, I'll come out here. But a lot of the times, it's a long trek, but I'll do the most I can to come out here as often as I can, just to see the kids.
And the people who work with him on these projects know that's not just an empty promise.
I mean, he's central to it in terms of the way that things are happening. And you can, as you say, you can see he just loves the children.
Not just a figurehead then?
No, he's definitely not.
When Prince Harry started his Sentebale charity 2 years ago, he was determined it would focus on small community projects that would make an immediate and real difference. Coming here, it's obvious his vision has been achieved, and he's delighted. And in this tiny country with such massive problems, he's not alone in that respect. Martin Geisler, ITV News, Lesotho.
Cricket in the first Test match against South Africa at Lords looks to be heading for a draw. England took just 1 wicket on the 4th day as Graham Smith and Neil Mackenzie both scored centuries. Andy Ford watched the action.
England had it their own way for 3 days. Now it was South Africa's turn. Captain Graham Smith led from the front as the tourists produced a fight back at Lords. Smith rode his luck, edging a ball to the wicket-keeper off James Anderson early on, but it wasn't given by the umpires. This was the old-fashioned brand of Test cricket, enough to send some to sleep, but great for the purists. The ball was nudged and nurdled around as England's bowlers ran out of luck, Smith looping a catch into an empty space. The South African captain reached the 15th hundred of his Test career as England began to see the game slipping away. Smith had another life when Tim Ambrose spilled a catch from the bowling of Kevin Peterson. He was finally out when he took 1 chance too many against Anderson and fell for 107. His opening partner Neil Mackenzie was still there at the end, having completed his first Lord's century. England have it all to do on the final day, with South Africa closing on 242 for 1, 104 runs behind. Andy Ford, ITV News.
And that is the news for now. We'll have updates throughout the night, but for now, from all the Weekend News team, good night.
Your courtesy car will be with you this afternoon. Thanks for calling eShore. Bye.
ITV National Weather, sponsored by eShore.
Hello again, a very good evening to you. Cloudy and wet towards the northwest of the UK as we move through the night. Clearer and a touch cooler further south and east, a little bit misty here as well. And we're going to continue with the split in conditions as we start a brand new week. Always the best of the brightness across the central and eastern parts, and the best of the temperatures here as well, rising up to 25 Celsius, which is 77 in Fahrenheit. Not bad at all. Now further west, as you can see, cloudier with a few sprinkling of showers in places, but even here it's going to improve during the second half of the day, with rather more brightness arriving during the afternoon. Now if we look ahead to the rest of the week, not looking too bad at all. Still the splitting conditions, with rain arriving from midweek down to the south and east. Good night.
ITV National Weather, sponsored by eShore.